1,000 subscribers, let's go! Oh, I hope I didn't break the one wheel. Nope, she's good. Okay, so in today's video, I'm going to be talking about why I think EPIC Slo-Mo B-Roll is dead. See, for that whole intro sequence, I could have done it all in 60 frames per second, had the wheel spinning in slow motion and coming down the road and, you know, just passing over the bridge in slow motion of trees and plants and things like that, but you sort of expect that. You just sort of expect to see it, and then you just go, okay, cool B-roll sequence, on to the next thing. So let me explain what I mean by I think 60 frames, EPIC Slo-Mo B-Roll, 120 FPS is dead. Things like TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels are all shortening our attention span, and we just don't have the attention span for slow-mo B-roll anymore. We want to see everything snap, 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 and cut to the chase as fast as we possibly can. Now here's why I think it's a good thing, because it means that we have to get a little bit more creative with our shots, not just, okay, everything looks good in slow motion. Not everything looks great in 24 frames. So now we have to work a little bit harder to get either more creative angles or more creative transitions or more creative whereas slow motion, it's easy to do. In fact, I'll do it right now. See, it's easy. I mean, anybody can do it, and that's the great part about it. Everybody can do it, but now it doesn't really take much creativity or skill. You just sort of slowly push in on something in 60 frames per second, slow it down, add a little bit of music, jobs are good. And here's why I prefer 24 frames per second more. It's because it actually forces me to use my brain and think a little bit more about the shot. I could probably get a GoPro on the top of there, film that in 24 frames per second, get it on the side just to freshen up, you know, camera angles and make it interesting, make it different for the viewer. Now if we go back way when Peter McKinnon started the whole 60 frames 120 FPS sort of thing, it was new to YouTube and everybody thought it was exciting, so now we've got a million videos about EPIC Slo-Mo B-Roll sequence, cinematic EPIC Slo-Mo B-Rolls, and everybody's making one. 60 frames per second, you can make one on your iPhone and that's it, it's done. Why not take a step back and look at 24 frames per second and see what we can do with that? See what kind of creativity we can put into 24 frames. The different shots, the wide angles, the time it takes to set up a 24 frames per second shot is much longer than the time it takes to set up a 60 frames per second shot. And personally, I prefer the shot from the 24 FPS. Like when I set the camera up on the floor and then rode past it on the one wheel, that took some time to set it up, and that's why I prefer that over just a slow-mo, you know, the road passing by me, just boring. So let's switch it up. I challenge you to go out and film a B-roll sequence in 24 frames per second. You can fill a 15-second B-roll sequence with probably around 5 shots in slow-mo. It's not exactly hard, but to fill a 15-second B-roll sequence with 24 frames per second, that's a skill. I know the first thing that I do when I see a B-roll sequence coming up, or I anticipate a B-roll sequence coming up that's in slow motion, I'm normally going to double tap past it, because 60 frames per second B-roll sequences are starting to get like adverts. They're just sort of getting predictable and, okay, I'll skip past this and get to the actual, you know, content, rather than just this slow motion filler sequence. Whereas if I have a 24 frames per second sequence that's full of adrenaline and actually showing me something and fast whip panning different angles and things like that, I'm more likely to stick around for that. That's interesting. I think photographers and videographers on YouTube, we're all starting to get a little bit too lazy because we're following all the other photography trends like slow motion B-roll. But if we take a look at the TikTok and the Reels and the YouTube Shorts and things like that, you'll see that this is 15 seconds of 24 FPS content. And it's got us. So if we insert these little 15-second, 24 frame per second actually interesting sequences into our videos rather than these slow motion sections, I think audience retention will just fly up because it's just so much more interesting, and I can appreciate a good 24 FPS B-roll sequence that's had some thought into it and the person cares about what they made. Let's take my most recent YouTube short as an example. It was all shot in 24 frames was zooming in with the lens to emphasize opening up the Polar Pro filter pack, opening up the controller to the drone and pushing the buttons forward on the drone controller and things like that. But it's those little movements in a 24 frames per second timeline that keep things interesting. See, if I'd have just done all that in slow motion, opening the case, slow motion, pushing the sticks forward, slow motion, opening up the drone's arms, it's boring. I mean, I'm even getting bored speaking about it. Let's challenge ourselves to go out and create 24 FPS B-roll sequences and just have a lot more fun. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But before I go, I do want to say thank you for 1,000 subscribers. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the stuff that you already love to do. I will see you in the next one. I'm trying so hard not to run my phone over. I set my camera up on the floor and I'm trying not to run over it on the one wheel. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the stuff you already love to do. I will see you in the next one. Silly.